So guys, as I said in the video lecture, what is an erratic motion? An erratic motion is a weird motion that is represented graphically. It could be represented like V versus T, A versus T, S versus T, and I need to find all other variables, the variables of kinematics using one graph, right? I can also have some much more complicated cases where A, for example, is represented versus S, or where V is represented versus S, and I need to find all other variables. So in this part, guys, I have two problems. The first problem is easy. The second problem is much more complicated. If you want to practice, you have to go back to the textbook of Kepler, and then you can practice or solve other problems. In the first problem, which is example 412.41, I have the velocity of car represented versus time, and not versus S. It's V versus T. And I know, guys, that in the first part, V is constant all over 40 seconds, and then V is decreasing all over another 40 seconds. What I have to find is the total distance traveled by the car until it stops at 80 seconds, right? So I need to find what is the total distance, and since here V is positive, the total distance will be the same as the displacement, delta S. So I need to find, guys, this delta S. All right, so delta S here, guys, is equal to the distance traveled, because not only V is positive, because V is not changing its sign. It could be a negative V, but it's not changing the sign. So in this case, I also have delta S is equal to distance traveled. Since here V is not changing its sign, it's always positive, then I can say that delta S will be equal to the distance traveled. Now, how to find delta S? In fact, guys, I know that ds is equal to what? ds is the integration of... Yes, you're not listening, guys? Not hearing me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let's continue. ds is equal to the integration of v dt, and what does this mean? This means, guys, that I should find the area under the curve. And this is, guys, the area under the curve could be found if the curve is regular. So if I can have this area, if the curve, if the plot is a curve, I cannot find the area under this curve unless I do the integration. So here, guys, I don't have to do the integration, because in fact, the area under this curve is regular. So it's divided into a square and then into a triangle. So what I'm going to do now is to find delta S, and this delta S will be equal to delta 1 plus delta S2. So delta S is the whole area under the curve, so I'm going to divide it between delta S1 and delta S2. Now, what is delta S1? It is the area of this, it's not a square, in fact, it's a rectangle. So it is 10 times 40 plus the area of this triangle, which is BH over 2. Now, what is the base here? It's 40 times H, which is 10 over 2. All right, guys? So what will be this area? It is 600 meters, because in fact, the velocity is given in meters per second. The time is in seconds. Right? So the distance traveled, guys, by this car is 600 meters. Okay. Now, this is delta S, the displacement. I cannot find S only unless I know S at... I cannot find S unless I know S at t equal to 0. Yes, so guys, if I know S is 0, I can find S1, S2, S3, and so on. So I cannot find S unless I know S is equal to, S at t is equal to 0. In this case, I only can find delta S because it is the area under this curve. Construct a t graph. How to construct a t graph? In fact, I know that A is the derivative of t. So I know that A is the derivative of t, which means it is the slope. Right? Now here, since V has a regular shape, I can directly draw A versus t. Right? So I'm gonna draw A versus t. Let's say this is A and this is t. Okay, so guys, in the first part, when t is between 0 and 40, is what? Who can tell? A is 0, perfect, because V is constant. So A is 0 here. And then in the second part, In the second part, guys, what do you think? In the second part, what do you think, guys? A is equal to minus 1 over 4, Abbas. Perfect. Yes. A is equal to minus 1 over 4 because in fact A should be negative since V is decreasing, and I should find the slope or the derivative of this V. What is the slope A of this V? In fact, the slope of a straight line could be found using some delta Y over delta X. Now here delta Y is delta V and X is T, so delta V over delta T. So how to find A? It is V2 minus V1 over T2 minus T1 and not T1 minus T2, all right? So V2, let's say here, V2 is 0 minus V1. V1 here is 10 over delta T, 80 minus 40, which is 40, so it is minus 1 over 4. So the second part of A will be minus 1 over 4. Guys, you can join them or you can remove this line. It's up to you. It is the same, all right? So it's minus 1 over 4. All right? So in the first part, A is equal to 0. In the second part, A is equal to minus 1 over 4. Do you have any questions so far? Do you have any questions so far, guys? All right, it's a very easy problem. Now, this is a more complicated problem, 12.67. In this case, the boat travels along a straight line with the speed described by the graph. So this is a rectilinear motion. However, the speed V versus what here? Versus S. Now, it's not T, so it's much more complicated. So V versus S is given using this graph. In the first part, when S is between 0 and 100, V squared is equal to 4S, which means V is equal to 2 radical S. It's not minus 2 radical S. I have to choose a positive root because, in fact, V is positive, all right? So in the first part, V is equal to 2 radical S. In the second part, V is a straight line versus S, and it's equal to 0.2 S. Now, the question is to what? It is to construct. Construct, guys, it's not the same as plot or draw. In construct, you should describe how can you draw this curve, all right? So construct ST and AS. First of all, I should construct S versus T, and then A versus S, and also determine the time required for the boat to travel a distance. S is equal to 400 meters if S is equal to 0, when T is equal to 0, and this is a very important condition. As we're gonna see why, guys, because we cannot find the answer of this problem unless we know this condition. We can see why. All right, so guys, what do you think is the equation that I should start with to construct S versus T? I know V versus S. I had to find S versus T. Integration of T? No. What do you mean by integration of T? I ask you what should be the equation used in order to construct S versus T if I know V versus S, the equation used. What do you think, guys, the equation used? Your colleagues in the first question answered me correctly. Independent of T? No. I should find S versus T, so it should be dependent on T. Integration of dt using what equation, Taraf? I should have an equation to start with in order to find S versus T. V is equal to ds over dt. Yes, perfect. It is V is equal to ds over dt, guys. Perfect, Batul. Because I know V versus S. I need to find S versus T. So I need to choose the equation that has V, S, and T. What is the equation that has V, S, and T? It is V is equal to ds over dt. And now, guys, if I want to do a separation of variables, how can I do it? In fact, guys, in the previous problems, I can find the S by separating the variable and multiplying V by dt. Is this our case now? No, I should find dt. So what is dt? Yes, Batul, dt should be alone. dt is equal to ds over v. That's it. So it should be ds over v. This is dt, guys. All right? Now, since I have two equations of v, I'm going to divide my curve into two parts. In the first part, s is between 0 and 100. If s is between 0 and 100, I know that v is equal to what? V is equal to 2 plus 2 radical s, because v is positive. All right? So I'm gonna find t versus s, or s versus t, by doing the integration of this equation, right? So I'm gonna do the integration of dt is equal to the integration of ds over v, because I know v versus s, it is 2 radical s. So it is s over v. And then, guys, what do you think will be the boundaries here? Since s is between 0 and 100, then this is 0 and this is 100. Now, guys, the boundaries of s is between 0 and 100. What about the boundaries of t? It is between 0 and, so guys, sorry, I'm gonna replace this 100 by s to find the general equation. So the boundaries of ds over v is between 0 and s. Now, what are the boundaries of t is between 0 and t? And that's why, guys, they are giving me this equation, all right? If I don't know this equation, I cannot say that s is equal to 0 when t is equal to 0, all right? I cannot do the integration. Since I know that s is equal to 0 when t is equal to 0, then I can say that the boundaries here are 0 and 0, all right? Okay, guys. So this means that t is equal to the integration of between 0 and s of ds over 2 radical s. Now, what is the integration of ds over 2 radical s? Like dx over 2 radical x. What is the integration, guys, of this function? So it's a known integration, huh? It's a known integration, guys. What do you think? Yes, it's the square root. It is radical s, guys. So t is equal to radical s between s and 0, which is radical s. This is t. Guys, the question is to construct s versus t. So at the end of the day, I have to find s in terms of t. So what will be s in terms of t? S is equal to t squared. All right, guys? Do you have any questions so far?